When Donald Trump stepped onto that broken-down public bus, no one recognized him, and that's exactly what made what happened next possible. No camera crews, no flashing headlines. Just a cold Thursday morning, an anonymous road in Pennsylvania, and the former President of the United States wearing a ball cap and sunglasses, sitting quietly in the third row from the back. He didn't speak, but he listened, and what he heard would change everything. It started with a cough from the engine, then a sharp knock, then silence. Trump sat in the back seat of the black SUV, staring out the window. Fields, fences, and frozen trees blurred past. They were somewhere west of Altoona, 2 hours from the next meeting he wasn't planning to attend anyway. For once, he wasn't running late. He was running from noise. The SUV lurched once, then died. "What was that?" Trump asked. The driver didn't answer at first. He coasted the vehicle to the shoulder and let it roll to a stop on the gravel. Then he popped the hood. Trump stepped out behind him. Cold wind hit him in the chest. He pulled his jacket tight and looked up and down the road. Empty in both directions. The driver called out from the front, "Looks like the transmission. We're dead until I can get a tow out here." Trump checked his phone. No signal. Not a single bar. "You're kidding," he muttered. "I'll flag someone down," the driver said. "No need," Trump replied. He was already watching something approach, a faded blue bus rattling down the two-lane road. It looked like it belonged to a different decade. The kind of bus nobody expected to see anymore. Outside a movie about struggle. The thing hissed as it slowed. It stopped alongside the SUV. The door swung open with a wheeze. The driver, middle-aged with rough hands and a tired smile, leaned out. "Need a lift?" he asked. Trump paused. His first instinct was to say no, but something in him said yes. Maybe it was the stillness of the road. Maybe it was the way the clouds hung so low over the trees. Or maybe it was just curiosity. He pulled his cap lower over his forehead and said, "Sure." He stepped aboard. The bus smelled like stale coffee and winter coats. The seats were old, cracked, patched with tape in some places. A few riders turned to glance at him, then looked away. No recognition, no whispers, just a new guy getting on. Perfect. He dropped some cash in the box, nodded to the driver, and walked to the back. Third row from the end. Left side. Window seat. The engine rumbled. The bus groaned forward. For a moment, Trump just watched the gray scenery crawl by. Then he started listening. Directly in front of him, a woman in her 30s held a toddler close while talking to the man beside her. Her voice was low and tired. "Rent's going up again. I picked up another night shift. Still won't cover it." The man nodded. "My boy's stuck in the Medicaid loop. Been waiting 9 months. Still can't get approved. And his meds aren't cheap." 2 seats up, a guy in construction boots muttered into his phone, "No, they still haven't processed my appeal." "Yeah, I know. Yeah, I sent it in again. I'm telling you, it's been 6 weeks." Across the aisle, a young man scrolled through job listings on his phone. He was muttering numbers under his breath, probably bills. Next to him, an elderly woman was reading a letter, her lips trembling a little. Could have been a utility shutoff, maybe eviction. Trump had seen those kinds of envelopes before. He sat back and watched them. No scripts, no teleprompters, just raw, unfiltered life. The kind of life people talk about at rallies. The kind of life politicians mention in speeches. The kind of life Trump used to promise to fix. But this was different. This was real. And nobody knew they were talking within arm's reach of the man who'd once had the power to change it all. He leaned his elbow on the window, listening more. The toddler started crying. The woman bounced him gently, whispering, "Shh, Mommy's trying, okay? Mommy's trying." The man beside her said, "You shouldn't have to work 2 jobs just to survive." She shrugged. "Nobody listens anyway." A silence followed that hit harder than any complaint. The bus bumped over a pothole. A few people grumbled. No one yelled. They were used to it. Trump looked down at his hands, manicured, clean, still pink from the cold. He flexed his fingers slowly. They'd never installed drywall, never picked up garbage, never changed a tire for money. Not once. They'd signed billion-dollar deals. They'd pushed gold elevators, but they'd never held anything like what these people were carrying. And yet, here he was, on the same bus, going the same direction. The bus pulled over twice, once to let off a man with a broken cane, once to pick up a teenage girl wearing a fast food uniform and earbuds. She slid into a seat and immediately fell asleep, head against the window. Looked like she hadn't slept in days. The ride into Hollow Creek took 45 minutes. The town was barely a blip on the map. One gas station, a barber shop, and a diner that looked like it hadn't changed owners since Nixon. "This is the end of the line," the bus driver called out. Trump stood and walked up the aisle slowly, past every face, met every eye that looked up. Still, no one recognized him. Outside, the cold cut through his coat again. The bus pulled away, exhaust puffing into the gray sky. The engine groaned as it turned the corner and disappeared. His SUV was still at the side of the road, a tow truck just arriving behind it. The driver waved. Trump didn't wave back. He stood there, staring down the road where the bus had gone. He'd gotten on for warmth, for convenience. But he stepped off carrying something heavier, a story, a burden, and maybe, just maybe, a responsibility he hadn't understood until now. Donald Trump had ridden in limousines, helicopters, and private jets. He'd ridden in armored SUVs and sleek black sedans. He'd never once ridden in a vehicle where the roof rattled every time the wind hit it sideways. The bus rolled along the cracked highway, humming like it was holding its breath. Inside, people talked. Not loud, not cheerful, just honest. Trump sat still. Ball cap pulled low, sunglasses on. He looked like someone's grandfather. Or maybe just a drifter with a little money. Nobody paid attention. Perfect. The woman in front of him was named Maria Delgado. He knew that because she said it out loud, spelling her last name on the phone as she argued with her landlord. "Yeah, I did send the check. I have the receipt. You can't raise the rent again. I haven't even caught up on last month." Her voice was steady, but only barely. A toddler in a puffy blue coat sat beside her, coloring on a napkin with a broken crayon. Maria hung up, closed her eyes, and let out a breath like it weighed 30 pounds. She glanced at her son, gave him a tired smile, then stared out the window like she was searching for a way out. Next to her was Walter Dean, older, 60, maybe 65. Wore a brown leather coat that had seen too many winters, dog tags around his neck. The kind of guy who called people kid and still. Believed in standing during the anthem, but his voice cracked when he spoke. "They lost my file again," he told Maria, shaking his head. "VA says to be patient. I've been patient since Fallujah." Maria gave a soft, sad nod. No politics, just empathy. Trump sat behind them, silent. Ahead of them was a teenager, 16, 17 tops. Skinny, nervous energy, twitchy fingers. Name was Devon. Trump heard it when he FaceTimed someone named Darnell. "Nah, man. They called me in today. If I don't show, I lose the shift. That's like $40 gone." "Yeah." "Nah, I'll sleep later." He ended the call and leaned back. Looked like he hadn't slept the night before, or the one before that. Across the aisle sat Lamar Hayes, late 40s. Wore jeans with paint on them, jacket zipped halfway. Had the look of a man who used to work with his hands until someone told him not to. Laid off, probably. Maybe construction. Maybe factory. Trump watched him stare at his calloused palms like they held answers nobody else could read. "You hear what they're doing with the new zoning rules?" Lamar said to no one in particular. "Making it harder for small contractors to get certified. It's all politics. You gotta know a guy to get a license now." No one responded, but a few heads nodded. A voice came from the back. Cheryl Patterson. Mid-50s, oversized coat, plastic grocery bags at her feet. "My brother can't walk," she said. "Stroke took him out 2 years ago. Still waiting for Medicaid approval. They keep saying they need another form. Always another form." Nobody said sorry. Nobody needed to. They understood. All around him, Trump saw pieces of the country he used to talk about, the forgotten ones. But here, they weren't slogans. They had faces, names, kids, deadlines. They weren't angry exactly, just worn down, and they spoke like nobody was listening, which they believed, because nobody was. A man 2 seats ahead chuckled bitterly. Ravi Patel, small business owner, owned a family restaurant. Trump learned from overhearing a conversation with the woman next to him. "They fined me for putting tables on the sidewalk," he said. "Then the city sends a new inspector every week. They say it's random compliance checks. Feels more like harassment." "What did you do?" "Paid it. Can't afford to fight it. Not if I want to keep the lights on." Trump shifted slightly in his seat. His knee had started aching. His stomach, too. Maybe it was the cold. Or maybe it was the weight settling in. The weight of knowing. He watched Maria brush hair from her son's eyes. Watched Walter rub his knees and wince. Watched Cheryl carefully count change from a sandwich she didn't eat. This wasn't staged. These weren't photo ops. These were the people behind the numbers he used to read in briefings. The lives behind the words "Middle America" and "economic recovery." Trump had seen protests. He'd heard chants, both for and against him. But he'd never sat inside a moment like this. Not without power. Not without expectation. Just as a man on a seat like everyone else. A younger guy in the very front finally stood up, stretched, looked back. Trump tensed, waiting for a spark of recognition. Nothing. The kid just yawned, turned up his music, and sat back down. Trump let out a breath. He wasn't sure if he felt relief or something else. Outside, the sky darkened a bit. Snow threatened but never fell. The road curved into a small industrial town, smokestacks in the distance, most of them cold. The bus hit a rough patch and bounced. Maria's son laughed at the jolt. It was the only laugh on the bus so far. Walter smiled. "Tough little guy," he said. Maria nodded. "Tough's the only choice we've got." The driver called out, "Next stop, Montford Station." Nobody moved. Trump looked out the window. Closed stores, pawn shops, a boarded-up school. He remembered campaign promises, ribbons cut, speeches made. None of that mattered now. Not to them. Not here. He thought about standing up, saying something. Anything. But he didn't. Because this wasn't the time for speeches. This was the time to listen. The bus rolled through Montford Station without fanfare. A handful of houses with sagging porches. A shuttered bowling alley. A payphone with a missing receiver. Trump watched it pass by like a museum exhibit of forgotten places. The passengers barely blinked. In the seat ahead, Maria wrapped her son's coat tighter around him. The kid had fallen asleep with a crayon still clutched in his hand. Next to her, Walter sat quietly, staring out the window. Not sleeping, not thinking, just waiting, like he'd been waiting a long time. Trump leaned his elbow on the window and looked out at the town vanishing behind them. Something in his chest tightened. He didn't know the word for it. He remembered rallies, crowds roaring, flags waving, promises flying faster than facts. He'd believed it back then, believed he could fix everything, cut the red tape, drain the swamp, save the forgotten. But none of them were saved. Not yet. Not really. Not Cheryl, whose brother was still trapped in paperwork. Not Ravi, who paid fines just to avoid fights. Not Devon, who was trading sleep for minimum wage. Not Lamar, who built things until the system unbuilt his life. He watched their faces, quiet, tired, steady, not angry, not screaming, not blaming, just carrying too much. He wanted to say something. He really did. A line, a solution, anything. But everything in him said no. Not because he didn't care, but because for the first time in a long time, he realized talking wasn't what was needed. Listening was. The bus turned off the highway and onto a narrower road. The signs were older here, rusty, crooked. The pavement cracked like dried skin. The driver said nothing, just kept moving. Up ahead, a flashing sign warned of construction. A short detour took them past a closed-down steel mill. Trump recognized the style, knew the history. Jobs used to live in places like that. Now only ghosts. Lamar spoke again, this time softer. Used to work in there. 23 years. My dad, too. We had a crew. Good men. Union was strong. Then came the buyouts. Then the consultants. Then the shutdown. Cheryl turned from across the aisle. What did they turn it into? Nothing, Lamar said. Just locked the gates and walked away. Ravi shook his head. Same story everywhere. Walter chuckled bitterly. My buddy says America doesn't build things anymore. We just buy broken things from overseas and call it a deal. Maria asked, So what do we do now? Nobody had an answer. Trump sat still. No reaction. But inside, something shifted. He'd read reports about factories closing, talked about bringing jobs back. He'd even signed a few bills he thought would help. But sitting here, hearing them, not as data points, but as people, it all landed differently. He shifted in his seat. The vinyl creaked beneath him. Devon spoke next, youngest guy on the bus. Still had fire in his voice, but it was losing fuel fast. Applied to 15 jobs last week, he said. They either ghost me or say I'm overqualified. You ever been told you're too good for a job and not good enough for the next one? No one laughed. He shook his head. I just want to work. Just want to do something that matters. Cheryl reached across the aisle, offered him a wrapped granola bar. Devon took it with a nod. Didn't even unwrap it. Just held it for a while. The bus slowed again. Another town. This one had a food bank, a pawn shop, and a church with a flickering neon cross. Nobody got off. The silence returned. Trump stared out the window, sunglasses hiding eyes that blinked a little more than usual. In the past, when he'd visited towns like this, there were photo ops, staged stops, shiny hard hats and thumbs up with grinning workers. But not now. Now it was real. Now it was uncomfortable. He thought of Maria's son, coloring on a napkin because they couldn't afford books. He thought of Walter, a war veteran sleeping in his coat. He thought of Cheryl, counting every dollar like a soldier counts bullets. He thought of Lamar, who still wore his union pin even though the union was dead. He thought of Devon, trying to keep his pride from slipping through his fingers. And he thought of himself, a man who used to say he alone could fix it. Now he wasn't sure. Not unless he really heard them first. The bus creaked again. The suspension groaned. Another pothole. Another bump in the road. Nobody complained. They were used to rough rides. Maria finally turned around in her seat, looked at Trump. Just for a second, like she felt his eyes on her. "You work around here?" she asked. Trump thought for a second, then said, "Just passing through." She nodded. "Family?" He shook his head. "No." She didn't ask more. She turned back around, pulled her coat tighter around her son. Trump sat back, resting his head against the cool window. "Just passing through." It was the first true thing he'd said in a long time, but maybe he wouldn't keep passing through. Maybe it was time to stop, to stay long enough to understand, to listen long enough to care. The next morning, Donald Trump sat alone at a kitchen table in an old farmhouse outside of Pittsburgh. He'd bought the place under an alias 2 years ago. No staff, no security, except a single off-duty agent who kept his distance. No photos of gold towers, just wood floors, plain walls, and silence. On the table in front of him, a legal pad, a cheap ballpoint pen, and a lukewarm cup of black coffee. He stared at the page, then finally wrote 3 words at the top. The bus list. Below it, he started listing what he remembered. Names, details, nothing exact, but enough to go on. Maria, single mom, toddler, rent problems, multiple jobs, no backup. Walter, older vet, VA claim denied, PTSD in his eyes. Lamar, laid-off mill worker, used to build things, now lost in red tape. Cheryl, disabled brother, Medicaid delay, system failure. Devin, teenager, overworked, underslept, hope fading. Ravi, shop owner, legal trouble, harassed by inspectors. He stopped and took a sip of coffee. Bitter. Burnt. He didn't mind. He went back to the list and circled each name. Then he flipped to a fresh page. What can I fix? Trump stared at the question, then underlined it. He'd spent years in boardrooms and press conferences saying he knew how to fix things. He'd fired people on TV, pulled out of deals, rewrote trade policies with a Sharpie. But this wasn't about laws or tariffs. This was personal. He didn't want headlines, didn't want the credit. If they knew it was him, they'd think it was politics, a trick, a PR stunt. That would ruin everything. So it had to be quiet, completely off the record, anonymous. Trump flipped to a new sheet and started drawing lines, connecting problems to possible solutions. He made a call. Marcus Chen answered on the 3rd ring. Former DHS intel guy. Smart, loyal, discreet. I need help, Trump said. You're supposed to be off the radar. I still am. What kind of help? Research, background checks, quiet outreach, nothing illegal, nothing loud. On who? A few people, bus riders. I'll send you what I have. Marcus hesitated. You working with anyone else on this? No one. Just you. And you don't mention my name. Not once. You understand? I understand. He hung up. Trump texted a photo of the notebook page. Then he tossed the phone into the fireplace and watched it burn. No digital trail. No assistants. No accountants. No press team. Just one man with a pen and a mission. By nightfall, Marcus sent back the first few results, using a secure line from a burner laptop. Addresses, basic records, social media, public files. Nothing deep, but enough to confirm the stories were real. They weren't actors. They weren't exaggerating. They were drowning, and no one was coming to save them. Not unless he did. He poured himself another cup of coffee, reached for the next page, began writing again. Maria, contact landlord, get account balance, pay anonymously, offer job lead nearby. Walter, flag case to new VA contact in D.C., arrange legal rep, expedited claim. Lamar, Track down union pension access, check retraining programs, remove zoning barriers quietly. Cheryl, push Medicaid file through state contacts, hire nurse privately, use a cover fund. Devon, get GED resources, talk to school liaison, find mentorship opportunity. Anonymous grant? Ravi, pro bono legal team, quiet call to zoning board, monitor harassment. It wasn't politics, it was triage. For every person on that bus, he wrote a fix. And not just a Band-Aid, a lifeline. He knew how to get things done when he wanted to. Cut red tape, push buttons, move files. Sometimes that's all people needed. Someone in the right place who gave a damn. He would be that person. From behind the curtain. A few hours later, Marcus called back. You want all of this anonymous? Yes. Easier with intermediaries, legal firms, local donors. Some of it we can run through a fund with no obvious fingerprints. No press. No leaks. You sure? Trump paused. The day my name shows up is the day it all falls apart. Marcus was quiet for a second. Then, this is good work. Trump didn't answer. He just hung up. He sat back in the chair and looked around the room. Plain furniture, peeling paint, a stack of unpaid utility bills on the counter. Not his, but left behind by the last tenant. The place felt honest. He stared at the ceiling, closed his eyes. The stories wouldn't leave him. Not now. Not ever. Not the way Maria held her son while quietly losing hope. Not the way Walter's voice cracked when he talked about patience. Not the way Devon tried to act tough while holding a granola bar like it was gold. They weren't just voters. They weren't data points. They were people. And for the first time in years, he'd sat among them. Not above them, not as their leader, just as a man who had finally learned to listen. And now he was going to act. Not for applause, not for re-election, for them. Because someone needed to, and it might as well be the guy they never knew was there. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at Maria Delgado's apartment. She almost threw it away. Plain envelope, no return address, no company name. Just her name, misspelled slightly. Probably junk. But her kid was napping, and the room was quiet, so she opened it. Inside was a check. Her eyes read the number 3 times. Enough to pay 2 months of back rent, plus the new rate. Enough to cancel the eviction notice taped to her door. A short note came with it. From someone who believes in mothers who don't give up. No name, no signature. She blinked. Her hands shook. She picked up her phone, called the number on the rent notice. It's covered, the landlord said. Anonymous payment came through this morning. You're squared up. She hung up, sat on the couch, cried without sound. She never thought she'd get help, and never, not once, did she think of the quiet man on the bus. Walter Dean got a call from the VA the next day. His claim, stuck for nearly a year, was suddenly flagged for expedited review. A legal team out of D.C. had taken interest in his case. Veterans advocacy outreach, they said. Free representation. No cost. The woman on the phone explained the process, step by step. She sounded like she actually cared. 2 weeks later, Walter received a confirmation. Claim approved. Full benefits. Back pay. Immediate care coverage. The letter arrived with a P.O. Box return address from Arlington. He asked around. No one knew the lawyer. No one knew how it happened. He didn't care. He pulled the dog tags from around his neck and kissed them. Then he poured himself a drink and called his son for the first time in months. Looks like I'll finally be able to help out, he said. Cheryl Patterson was in line at the pharmacy when her phone rang. Is this Cheryl? The woman asked. We're calling from the state's health coordination office. Your brother's Medicaid case has been reclassified for urgent processing. Home health support is scheduled for Thursday. Cheryl didn't respond right away. Her brain was trying to catch up. But we've been waiting over a year. Yes, ma'am. We flagged it internally. You were on the radar. We're sorry for the delay. 2 days later, a nurse showed up at their apartment with paperwork and a smile. Cheryl didn't ask how it happened. She didn't want to jinx it. She just whispered, "Thank you," to no one in particular. At his shop, Ravi Patel unlocked the front door and stopped dead in his tracks. A clean, folded envelope sat under the mat. Inside, legal papers. A notice that the zoning board's previous citation had been withdrawn. A warning expunged. An apology, even. The enclosed business card belonged to a top-tier law firm in D.C. He called the number. "I didn't hire anyone," he said. "You were referred to us by an outside party who wishes to remain anonymous," the assistant said. "Your case was reviewed. We believed it warranted action." Ravi opened the shop and made chai for his parents. He didn't tell them everything, just that the pressure was off. For now. He looked out the window at the sidewalk that had almost ruined his business and smiled. Guess someone out there believes in second chances. Devin Harris was late for school again. The bus didn't come, so he walked the last mile in the cold. Hoodie soaked through, shoes cracked. At the school office, they handed him a letter. "A scholarship?" he asked. "For GED tutoring and testing," the secretary said. "Comes with a laptop. You were nominated by an anonymous donor." Devin blinked. "Why me?" She smiled. "Because someone saw your potential." He didn't say it out loud, but he thought about the quiet guy on the bus, the one who sat behind him, who didn't talk, but listened like every word mattered. Lamar Hayes had a voicemail waiting on his burner phone. "Mr. Hayes, this is Claudia with New Steel Workforce Alliance. We have an opening in our senior training program, union-sponsored. Benefits kick in day 1. Your name was passed to us by a partner foundation. Can we talk?" He called back, said yes before they finished the sentence. When he hung up, he pulled the old mill badge from the drawer and held it for a moment. The photo was faded. So was the man in it. But Lamar wasn't. Not anymore. No one knew. No press releases. No media coverage. No social media posts. Not one of them suspected the same man had touched each of their lives. Because none of them recognized him. To them, he had just been a guy on the bus, sitting quiet, listening, watching the way life really was. But behind the scenes, Donald J. Trump was still moving the pieces. From the farmhouse, he tracked every outcome. Maria's rent paid, Walter's benefits restored, Cheryl's brother getting help, Ravi's business saved, Devin's future rewritten. Lamar back in the workforce, one by one. No fanfare, no fingerprints, just solutions. He met with Marcus once a week in person. No phones, no laptops, just printed updates. "How much are we spending?" Trump asked. Marcus flipped a page. "Less than one of your rallies cost." Trump grunted. "Good. We'll do more." "What do we call this?" Marcus asked. "The press will want a name someday." Trump looked out the window. The trees were bare. The sky was gray. "We don't call it anything," he said. "It never happened." He walked to the fireplace, tore up the summary, and dropped it into the flames. In Hollow Creek, Maria sat in the diner with her son. He was drawing on a napkin again, this time with real crayons. The waitress poured her coffee and asked, "Things looking up?" Maria smiled. "Yeah," she said. "Just got a little lucky, I guess." Good deeds don't stay quiet forever. Not in small towns. Not when people who've always been overlooked start catching lucky breaks. That's how it started. just whispers. Nothing solid, just enough to make someone curious. At the Hollow Creek Diner, Maria's landlord was talking to a guy from the gas company. The conversation drifted. Delgado got caught up? Just like that? Anonymous donor, she says. Paid it all. No strings. The guy raised an eyebrow. Hell of a coincidence. A booth over, an older woman overheard. She worked part-time filing documents at the town hall. She'd seen paperwork disappear before, but not like this. And at the VA clinic in the next town, Walter mentioned his case being suddenly approved. The nurse nodded and said 3 others had their files fast-tracked too. Something's going on, she muttered. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't right either, because what was happening wasn't organized. It was personal. Trump sat by the window of the farmhouse, reading a file Marcus had dropped off. He didn't like what he saw. A local paper had picked up the story. The headline was small, printed below the fold. 6 locals catch a break. Help comes from unknown source. A journalist named Claire Bennett had been asking questions. Nicely at first, then not so nicely. She'd tracked patterns, names, called law firms, nonprofits, even a DC veteran group. Nobody talked, but the silence itself told her something. She didn't have proof, just smoke. But smoke meant fire, and fire meant trouble. Trump dropped the file on the table. We need to pull back. Marcus leaned on the doorframe. People are asking questions. I know. That's why we don't answer. You still want to help? Of course. But we go quieter, cleaner, burn every trail. These people don't need headlines. They need results. Marcus nodded. You know, it'd be easier if you just told them. If they knew it was you. Trump turned. And then what? They thank me? They vote for me again? That's not what this is. Then what is it? Trump looked out the window. The fields beyond were turning green again. Slowly. It's what I should have done when I had the spotlight. He walked to the fireplace, tossed the file in, watched it burn. Back in town, Devin got a text message. No name, just a link. It led to an online course, automotive repair, funded and approved. Enrollment already complete. He showed the email to his friend. They signed me up. Who? Devin shrugged. I don't know. Somebody. He thought back to the bus. The quiet guy. Older, pale hands. Watched everything but said nothing. He pulled out a notebook and wrote 2 words. Bus guy? But he didn't say anything. Not yet. At the Patel family restaurant, Ravi stepped out for air. He checked the mailbox. Inside, a white envelope. Inside the envelope, nothing but a note. You're doing good work. Keep your head up. A friend. No name, no number, no return address. He stood there a moment, then folded the note and slipped it into his wallet behind a photo of his late father. At the same time, back at the farmhouse, Marcus closed a folder and said, We've got a problem. Trump looked up. What kind? Someone's looking harder. Claire Bennett. She's smart. She's tenacious. She's also got friends in Washington. Press? And a few who used to work in your administration. Trump didn't blink. Then we work faster. We finish what we started before she prints it. We can't help everyone. Just the ones I met. That's enough for now. He tapped the table. Maria's stable. Walter's getting care. Cheryl's brother's situation is holding. Devin's headed somewhere. Ravi's clear. For now. Lamar? Training begins Monday. Looks good. Good. Start another list. Marcus raised an eyebrow. More people? Same town, same bus route, same struggle. We don't stop just because people are watching. Marcus nodded, but didn't smile. He knew what was coming. Someone would talk eventually. Someone always did. And someone nearly did. That someone was Lamar. He sat on a bar stool at Murphy's, a cheap beer in front of him, and a friend asking too many questions. "You said your training came out of nowhere?" "Yeah," Lamar said. "Whole thing just landed in my lap." "You ask why?" "I didn't." "Come on. You don't think that's a little weird?" Lamar paused. Thought about the guy on the bus. Pale skin, hidden eyes, quiet, hands too smooth for hard labor. Something had nagged at him ever since. "Actually," Lamar said, "there was this guy on the bus." "Go on?" "Didn't talk, just listened. Watched. Sat in the back. Wore a hat. Older guy. Had this look about him." "What kind of look?" Lamar sipped his beer. Like he didn't belong there, but wanted to. Later that night, Trump paced the farmhouse kitchen, alone. The wind shook the windows. The radio was off. So was the TV. He liked the silence. It reminded him of the bus, of how loud people can be, even when they say nothing. He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, wrote 3 new names. Then he stopped, looked at the list, then turned it over. He wasn't finished. Not even close. But the world was watching now, and it wouldn't stay quiet much longer. The confrontation didn't happen in a press conference. It didn't come with flashing lights, or breaking news alerts, or the clatter of reporters chasing a scoop. It happened in a parking lot behind a grocery store. Cold morning, empty sidewalk, steam rising from a manhole. Lamar Hayes stood there in his work boots, holding a bag of breakfast sandwiches, fresh from his new job site. First full week. Muscles sore. Heart lighter than it had been in years. He didn't expect to see him again. But there he was. Donald Trump. Ball cap. Jacket. Sunglasses. Same walk. Same silence. He was walking toward a black pickup parked at the far end, unmarked. Lamar froze, watched him, then called out, "Hey!" Trump stopped, turned, didn't speak. Lamar took a step closer. "You were on the bus, weren't you?" Trump said nothing. "I thought I recognized the voice. Then I wasn't sure. Figured maybe I'd lost my mind." Still no answer. "But then stuff started happening," Lamar said. "Not just to me, to the others. Rent paid, VA benefits, GEDs, all at once. Quiet, no names." He took another step forward. "You're not just some guy, are you?" Trump took off the sunglasses. His eyes looked older than Lamar remembered. "You figured it out," Trump said. Lamar nodded. "Took a while." "You told anyone?" "No." "Why not?" Lamar shrugged. "Felt like it wouldn't be right." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Lamar said, "Why? Why go through all that trouble? Why help us without saying a word?" Trump looked out over the town. Smoke curled from a diner chimney nearby. Someone was warming up the grill. "Because it was time I shut up and listened," Trump said. "And when I finally did, I couldn't ignore what I heard." "That simple?" "Yeah," Trump said. "That simple." Lamar studied him. The man who once lived in gold towers, who stood in stadiums and told the world he alone could fix it. But now, here he was, in silence, with no cameras. "People wouldn't believe this," Lamar said. "They don't need to," Trump replied. He looked back at Lamar. "You doing all right?" Lamar nodded. "Better than I was." "Good." "Others too." "I know." Lamar looked at the bag in his hand, held it out. "Egg sandwich?" Trump smirked. "Haven't had one in a while." They sat on the tailgate of the truck, ate in silence for a minute. No motorcade, no teleprompters, just a working man and a quiet one who used to hold the world stage. "You miss it?" Lamar asked. "The spotlight?" Trump took a bite, chewed, swallowed. "Sometimes, but not today." Lamar nodded. "Good." A few more minutes passed. Trump stood up first. wiped his hands on a napkin, pulled the sunglasses back on. "I'm not asking you to keep this quiet," he said, "but I think you already know why it matters." Lamar nodded. "I know." Trump opened the truck door, paused. "Lamar? Yeah? You deserved better the first time." And with that, he climbed in, shut the door, and drove off. Lamar didn't tell anyone what happened. Not at first. He went to work. Drilled, hauled, welded. He told jokes at lunch. He called his daughter that night and asked about school. He paid off a debt. But the moment sat with him. The man who had once stood behind podiums now walked alone. Quiet. Focused. Changing lives one line item at a time. The world didn't know. Maybe it never would. But Lamar did. And that was enough. Elsewhere, Claire Bennett, the local reporter, kept digging. She had a chart now. Photos, threads, timelines. Too many coincidences. She was close. But she didn't have the missing link. Not yet. Back at the farmhouse, Trump crossed another name off the list. Lamar's daughter. New scholarship. Fully funded. First in her class. He smiled slightly. Then flipped the page. New names. New problems. Still more to do. He wasn't finished. And the more he listened, the more he realized. This might be the most important thing he'd ever done. A month passed. Then another. The world kept turning. Gas prices ticked up. Headlines blared. Pundits shouted. Candidates positioned. Washington did what it always did. Talked fast. Moved slow. But in Hollow Creek, something was different. Small things. The kind you don't notice unless you're looking. The kind that mean everything if you are. Maria Delgado didn't cry when the new job came through. She laughed. A neighbor heard her. First time in months. It wasn't fancy, just a desk at the local hardware distributor. But it came with health benefits, flexible hours, and enough steady pay to keep the lights on without juggling 2 shifts and a toddler. Her son, Leo, started preschool. When the teacher asked him what his mommy did for work, he said, "She's the boss of papers." Not quite true, not yet, but closer than it had ever been. Walter Dean walked to the mailbox with less of a limp now. The new physical therapist said his strength was improving. He believed it. He started volunteering at the American Legion Post, helping younger vets fill out paperwork. He told them what boxes to check, what words to use, what lies to avoid. "Because," he said, "you shouldn't have to fight 2 wars, one overseas and one when you come home." Devin Harris got his GED. His instructor called him sharp. Said he had hands for engines and a brain for business. He started shadowing a mechanic at a garage in the next town over. Long hours, greasy hands, tired feet. But he smiled more. And when someone asked him how he got started, he shrugged. "Somebody saw something in me," he said. "Didn't say who, just gave me a shot." Ravi Patel added 2 tables outside. No inspectors stopped him. He got a letter last week. City license extended 5 more years. No issues. He called it karma. His mother called it a miracle. He just called it breathing room. He hired a second cook and started printing menus in Spanish and Arabic too. Said it was time the town stopped shrinking and started reaching out. Lamar Hayes woke before sunrise 6 days a week. Training ended. Job began. Welding, structural assembly, contracts lined up through next spring. Union benefits. Pension restarted. First one in, last one out. He bought a new pair of boots and paid off the payday loan that had been hanging over his head for 2 years. His daughter got into community college. Free ride. He helped her move into her dorm last weekend. She cried. He didn't, until the drive home. At the edge of it all, watching from a distance, was Trump. He didn't walk into town, didn't shake hands, didn't linger. He just passed through sometimes, to see, to listen, to feel the quiet hum of something he rarely allowed himself to believe in before. Progress without noise. The farmhouse still stood, still quiet, still off-grid. No press, no posts, no leaks. He met with Marcus less often now, only when necessary. Most of the system was working on its own. Private networks, shadow help, anonymous gestures, quiet wires, hidden gifts. No one traced it back to him. And that was the point. The wins didn't come from a podium. They came from the background, from small shifts in heavy lives. He liked it better this way. No politics, no spin, just results. Late one night, he stood on the back porch, staring out across the fields. The air was cool. The stars were out. He didn't know the constellations, but he looked anyway. He took out a worn envelope. Inside, the first list. The original one. The bus names. He read them once more. Then he folded it carefully, placed it in the fire pit, lit a match, watched it burn. Not because the story was over, but because it was no longer about him. It was theirs now. 200 miles away, Claire Bennett opened her laptop. Her article was ready. She had notes, quotes, a timeline of events, the coincidences, the anonymous donations, the legal documents, the aid that fell from the sky, everything but the name. She hovered over the headline field, thought hard. Then she wrote, "The Quiet Man, A Mystery of Mercy," and closed the file. She wouldn't publish it. Some stories don't need to be told. Some truths are more powerful in silence. Back in Hollow Creek, someone got off the bus at the corner of Main and Hensley. Same route. Different people now. But the system was in motion. Behind the curtains, someone had shown the town that help could come without strings attached. And hope, real hope, had a new face. Not a face on TV, not a face on a poster. Just a man who listened and walked away without needing to be thanked. 6 months later, the bus route looked the same. Same faded blue frame, same rattle in the wheels, same cracked vinyl seats. But the faces were different now, some older, some new, and some were gone, moved on, moved up, moved forward. Donald Trump boarded the 6:45 a.m. bus out of Montford Station. No fanfare, no aides, no security detail in sight. Ball cap, sunglasses, work jacket, quiet hands, just like before. He paid in cash, took his old seat, third from the back, left side, window. Outside, the town was waking up. Storefronts clicked open. A kid rode a bike past the church. The world spun forward. Across the aisle, a teenager in a school hoodie read quietly. 2 rows up, a mother rocked a baby. An older man talked about getting back on his feet. New job in Altoona, warehouse gig. Same route, different ride. Trump looked down at his hands. They were older now, slower, but steady. He listened to the stories, the laughter, the soft sighs, the mentions of hope, work, rent, benefits, all familiar. Only now, they weren't buried in frustration. They were possibilities. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathed in the mix of cold vinyl, cheap cologne, and morning coffee. No one recognized him, just the way he wanted it. At the next stop, someone stepped on board. A girl with a lunchbox and a backpack full of crayons. Her mother followed. Maria. She glanced toward the back, scanning for a seat. Her eyes paused on him. A second too long. He didn't move, didn't blink. She smiled faintly. Not a smile of recognition, a smile of gratitude, the kind that doesn't need names or explanations. She took the seat 2 rows up, didn't say a word, didn't need to. The driver hit a pothole. Trump jolted forward, caught himself. The kid in the seat behind him laughed. You okay, mister? Trump turned slightly, smiled. Just fine, kid. The driver called out, Next stop, County Road. Trump stood, walked up the aisle slowly. Each step felt like closing a chapter. He stopped by the door, turned back one last time, saw the people, the lives moving forward, the town rebuilding itself one small win at a time. And none of them knew who started it. That was the point. He stepped off into the cold. Gravel crunched beneath his boots. The bus hissed and rolled away. He watched until it disappeared behind the trees. Then he turned, hands in pockets, and walked down the side road alone. No press, no headlines. Just the hum of morning and the sound of a man who had finally learned how to listen. That was the end of it. No statue, no monument, just a moment, a choice, and a bus full of lives no longer forgotten. Epilogue. 1 year later. The diner in Hollow Creek had a new sign above the coffee counter. Hand-painted, small, wood frame. It read, We remember the quiet man. No name, no explanation. Locals didn't need one. They all had someone who'd been helped, someone who'd been heard, and someone who now helped others in return. Back in the farmhouse, a yellowed notebook still sat on a shelf. The first page was faded, but you could still make out the title. The Bus List. It was full of names crossed out, not because they were forgotten, because they were no longer waiting. And somewhere far from the noise, Donald Trump stepped onto another bus. Different state, different people, but the same plan. Sit down, say nothing, and listen for what needed fixing next. And that's where this story ends, at least for now. A quiet act of listening, a bus ride, and a ripple that changed more lives than anyone ever knew. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Drop us a comment and let us know. If this story of quiet leadership and real-world change moved you, be sure to like the video and hit subscribe. We post powerful stories like this every week to uplift, inspire, and spark thought. Feel free to share it with friends and family so we can keep spreading empathy and awareness far and wide. Your support helps us keep these stories alive and reaching the people who need them most. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in the next one.